Welcome, everyone. Today, we're diving into a topic that can make or break your business growth, hiring the right salesperson. And joining me today is a regular guest, Troy Harrison, a seasoned business coach with years of experience in finding the right person. Troy, welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. Glad to be here as always.
Yeah. I love our conversations. Today, we're going to talk about people, the person, the right person.
Yep. This is one of the biggest mistakes I see in hiring. And I call it hiring the book of business instead of the person. And I talk to business owners all the time. They say, "Oh, well, I want to hire somebody who's who's already got some relationships, who's already got some customers they can bring, and this is going to be how I grow my business." And what they're trying to do is buy business without buying a business. And I've been at this for a long time. And first of all, I've always said industry experience hires have about a 95% fail rate. About a 90% fail rate, I apologize. There is that 10% that works out. And the reason is that you seldom get the top people from your competitors. You usually get the people that they're glad to get rid of. And let's take that next level now, because again, I have a lot of business owners that will come to me and they'll say, "Troy, I need to find people who can already bring customers, who can already bring relationships, because I'm in a hurry, man. I need to grow this thing fast." Well, as Dave Ramsey likes to say, there are no shortcuts to any place worth going. And this is absolutely a shortcut. So let's take a little dive into the hiring of the book of business. And let's analyze this a little bit. First of all, however much somebody says they can bring to you, they might be able to bring a third of that. I rarely have I seen anybody bring more than a third of what they claim. So, see, you got somebody coming to you and saying, "Well, I can bring you $1 million worth of business." They're going to bring you about 333,000, and then they're going to sit on it because they're marketing themselves as a chunk of business rather than a person who can generate a chunk of business. And so it's a mistake on both sides. The people who market themselves as bringing business, they tend to want to market that instead of themselves because they're not at all confident about what they can do in the sales arena. And so what we usually see is somebody will come to a hiring process and they'll say to a business owner, "Okay, I've got these three big accounts that I can bring." They might be able to bring one of those accounts if in fact they are a difference maker. But honestly, it's fairly rare that they can even do that. I see many, many times when somebody will make a hire based on this philosophy on the book of business, and what'll happen is they'll bring one or two accounts and they'll just work those one or two accounts half to death. And 6 months or a year down the road, the business owner's sitting there going, "Hey, where's all this business I was supposed to get?" What I want to ask your viewers to do, particularly hiring managers and business owners, is start thinking about your own book of business. Think about your own book of business and think about the salespeople who control that business. Now, put yourself in the customer's shoes and ask yourself how much of this business is actually due to the relationship with the salesperson and how much is due to the service, the products, et cetera, that you provide. What does that mix look like? For most accounts, a good salesperson can be a big help, but their presence or absence isn't going to be the difference in whether or not you keep that account. Now, if they go someplace else and they try and come back after that account and you don't immediately put somebody in charge of it, yeah, you might lose it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they were the be all and end all of why that customer is doing business with you. And it's the same thing when you're looking at somebody coming to you and saying, "Hey, I can bring these accounts." You've got to start thinking about and asking them, "Okay, what makes you the difference maker in this account?" Matter of fact, I'm going to give your viewers a couple of great questions they can ask when they've got somebody coming to them and saying, "I can bring these accounts with me." Let's say you're going down the book of business hire. The first question that you need to ask is, "Okay, tell me which major accounts will come with you." And it's okay to define a major account, but you're looking at your A-level accounts, whatever, however you classify your A-level accounts. How many of those accounts are you going to bring? And this personal name off of, one, two, three, four, five. Okay. Let's look at these individually. And for each one, ask them, how did this relationship originate? You'll be surprised how often that candidate says, well, they've been doing business with the company for a while, and then I came in and I took over the account. So your drill down on that is okay. So it was the company's account before it became your account. So why is it your account now and not still the company's account? And a lot of times that salesperson is going to respond, hamana, 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 because nobody ever asks them these questions. And you've got to be willing, by the way, to be a little bit of a hard ass in these interviews, but if you are willing to ask difficult questions looking somebody in the eye, you're going to get a pretty quick read. And by the way, those stories on how many accounts they can break down, they can bring, they're going to break down pretty quickly most of the time. Not always. There are going to be times when you're going to have somebody that says, I prospected this account, I prospected this account, and here's why they're coming with me. And the why they're coming with me needs to be more than, I'm a great guy and we like to have beer together. They need to have substantive reasons for why these accounts are going to come with them. And again, most of the time when you start interviewing, these stories are going to break down. We're talking about the exceptions now. So, your next set of questions, after you've gone through the A-level accounts that they say they're going to bring, I'm going to bet at least half of them have broken down, probably about, again, two-thirds. But here's the next question. Okay, let's suppose worst case scenario. You come to work for my company, you don't get to bring any of these accounts for whatever reason. Your company finds a non-compete that you're claiming you didn't have, or all these companies, it turns out, are happy enough with their current supplier that they're not going to change. Now you've brought me nothing. What are you going to do to build a territory?
Good
And
question.
again, much of the time, what you're going to hear is hamana, 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 because nobody ever asks them these questions and they're not prepared to answer them. And here's where I'm going with all this. This is why I like to hire the person rather than the accounts. Personal skills and traits are replicable and scalable. In other words, if you hire somebody who has the ability to reach out to the market and generate new business for you and take relationships away from other companies and build a book of business on his or her own, that is scalable and replicable. And if they bring an account or two with them, great. That's icing on the cake. But what is not scalable and replicable is a finite set of relationships that they already have. Begin with the assumption that they're only going to bring at best one-third of what they have. Ask them tough questions about those accounts that they say they can bring. And yes, you should drill down all the way to who's the account, who's your contact person, what's their title, what's their level of authority. Drill down because, again, a lot of times these stories are going to fall apart when you drill down. And then finally, challenge them and ask them, okay, let's suppose that you don't bring anybody. What are you going to do to build business for me and build up your territory? The vast majority of time, if you do this, you're going to end that interview without wanting to hire that person, and that's okay. That's as it should be. Because I find that people who market themselves as bringing accounts are doing so because they either can't or won't bring the work habits, traits, and skills that will build business. And I'm even talking about veterans here. There are a lot of veterans that did all these things years ago to build their territories. And now they've reached a point where what they're trying to do is get a payday off of the accounts that they have collected. Again, what I prefer is hire the person because the person is always replicable. And I'm a fan of hiring people from outside the industry in jobs that don't pay as much as a successful salesperson in my industry, teaching in my industry, giving them a step up, and allowing them to build a book of business for me that will continue to grow and will continue to generate profits. Here's the funny thing. I said in the beginning that people who are trying to hire the book of business are trying to take a shortcut. They're trying to jump up. What usually happens is that it ends up not being a shortcut. They end up investing a lot more time and not getting the result that they're after in the first place than they would if they'd have gone out and hired actual people that had skills and traits and gave them the time to build up and build their book of business. So
Yeah,
that's my
Troy.
approach on that.
Good words. I think I've probably seen too many TV shows and movies about salespeople who have a book of business and they kind of hold their employer hostage with the threat
Mhm.
of, if I leave, I'm taking them with me. Maybe they won't go, but that's the threat. I think it's really attractive, though. I think you have to acknowledge that as an employer hiring a salesperson, if they have the right personality, if they're the person that you want, and they have a book of business, that's pretty tough to say no to.
It is, but it's also rarer than hen's teeth.
Hmm.
I have been a participant in hires of people from within the industry where they didn't talk at all about the relationships that they could bring. They just demonstrated that they were the right person. They came on, and then they turned around and brought relationships that we didn't know we were going to get.
Yeah, that's what you want.
I, you know, at the poker table, they call these tells. And for me, one of the tells is when their primary approach is, I can bring these accounts. And by the way, I want to hit on something else you talked about a little bit there. You said, you've got the salesman threatening, I'll leave and I'll take these accounts. One of the rules I always had when I was managing a sales team, and I was very clear with my salespeople about it. If you say the word quit or any other combination of words that includes or alludes to the word quit, you have. When somebody threatens to leave, they're already mentally disengaged. You might as well accept the resignation right then. And I have seen many an instance where salesperson has threatened the employer. They've said, I'm going to leave and take these accounts with me. And the employer looked him in the eye and said, okay, you just quit. Go ahead, try. And what they typically find out is that they can't do it. So and as a sales manager, if you instigate that culture that says that once you start going down the road of talking about quitting, you've already got one foot out the door, so go ahead and put the other foot out of it. You end up with a lot more productive sales team because the salesperson that is talking about quitting to you is the salesperson who is spreading negativity throughout the team.
Let me put on I'm the client here, and
Sure.
you brought me into your company. You're my salesperson. We have a good relationship. I'm using your product or services. You change companies, and now you're saying, oh, but now here's a better one. Did you lie to me before?
Credibility gap.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can't be Mr. This today, Mr. That tomorrow, and probably Mr. Something else a couple of years from now and still retain your credibility.
because months or years you've told me this is the best solution, this company and what we're doing right now. Buy, buy,
Exactly.
buy. Yeah.
Exactly. And again, that's why, as a matter of fact, when I have really seen people have success bringing relationships, it's been a non-competitive situation. In other words, they had relationships with companies that they were doing business with in a completely different arena. They come to work for one of my clients or for me, and the natural thing, if it's a fit, is to reach out and say, "Hey, I'm also, we had a great relationship over there. They're a great company. I encourage you to keep doing business with them because it doesn't hurt me at all. But I'd like to come back in and talk to you about the new thing that I'm doing."
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of success with that.
Well, it's honesty.
Yeah,
Yeah. How
yeah,
about that?
and the number one thing that customers want nowadays from a salesperson is honesty and transparency.
Hmm.
And it's like I always say, you can either embrace transparency or you can have it forced upon you.
Exactly.
And yeah, but no, you made a very good point there is you do have that credibility gap with people who are bouncing around the same industry because customers sit there and they go, "Okay, I'm tired of this.
Hmm.
You've already told me that two other companies were the best solution. I don't believe a word you're saying now."
Yeah. That's the problem. I get that.
It is. And
Well,
every industry, Jeff, has what I call the swirling undertow
yeah.
of salespeople who have never really accomplished anything, but because they have industry experience on their resumes, they're going to keep getting hired because people think it's a shortcut. I've got a former client right now in a different industry than the ISSA that they actually called me on Friday for me to help. And it's been, I don't know, 6 years since I've worked with them. And they got in a hurry. They ended up staffing with a whole bunch of people from their industry. And out of four people, they've got three that are kind of rejects.
Mm.
And they may have gotten lucky with one. But now we've got to go back and unwind that whole thing. It's just
Yeah.
it's a thing. It happens.
So I guess a takeaway in my head now is hire the personality, not the pulse.
Yeah, exactly. Hire the person.
Yeah.
Do a good interviewing process looking for traits and learn skills. Don't worry so much about experience. Don't worry so much about relationships. If they have the ability to build relationships in other industries, they have the ability to do it in yours as well. The
Yeah.
only industry that's rocket science is, in fact, rocket science.
Good words to close on. Troy, thank you for this today.
Thank you, Jeff. Always a good time.